Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Pardon my scratchy throat this morning, still wrestling with a sinus infection, coming along with all the allergies of the season. But we're in John chapter 21, in a beautiful picture of restoration. As we yesterday left Jesus having breakfast for the disciples, he's prepared it there on the shore after their fishing expedition, where he allowed them to miraculously catch 153 fish. I'm going to deal with that a little bit more maybe tomorrow when my voice, I hope, is better. But let's look at what he did next. As we get down to verse number 15, it says, "When they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' 'Well, yes, Lord,' he said to him. 'You know that I love you.' 'Feed my lambs,' he told him. Now, second time he asked him, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' 'Yes, Lord,' he said to him. 'You know that I love you.' 'Shepherd my sheep,' he told him. Then he asked him a third time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' And Peter was grieved that he asked him the third time, 'Do you love me?' And he said, 'Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you.' 'Feed my sheep,' Jesus said." And before I get to the rest of Jesus' response here, I do want to point out that many people will say, okay, now, this is interesting because the way the pattern goes, John being written in the Greek language, is that Jesus begins by asking, "Do you agape me?" Agapeo would be the verb in that particular case. And Peter responds, "I phileo you, I love you," because there are many variations of the word love with stronger examples in the Greek language. And that, obviously what Peter was saying, and this is to some folks, is that, well, I love you, but, my actions have shown that it's not as strong a love as it should be. And so I've heard many people, including myself, have maybe preached from that angle before. It's not that wise, though, to put a sharp distinction between these different words for love, because Jesus, through his own ministry, used phileo, even sometimes to talk about the Father's love for himself. And the good question is, do you think the disciples and Jesus were even speaking Greek to one another at this point? That was the language John was written in. But, it's more likely they were probably speaking in the common language of the day, Aramaic. So would it have been that distinct in that language? Good question. I think the main point here is that Jesus asks him 3 times. Remember, it was at the Lord's Supper that he predicted that Peter would 3 times deny him before the rooster crowed. And so I think it was quite intentional that this threefold commission was being handed down by Jesus, where he's saying to Peter, you're not going to be a fisherman after this. You're going to be a shepherd, and not a shepherd of sheep, but a shepherd of people in the church. Feed my lambs, shepherd my sheep, feed my sheep. So he's giving Peter the commission of what he's going to be doing with the rest of his life. But he wants to emphasize it by doing it 3 times, because 3 times Peter had denied Jesus. He gives him the opportunity to the 3 times once again affirm his love for the Lord. And it was because of that 3rd time that I think it hit Peter's heart. Remember when he denied Jesus and that rooster crowed, how he went out and wept bitterly? It hit him. Oh, that's what Jesus is doing. It was the Lord's way of gently restoring Peter in such a way that he said, "You're still my man. You're the one that's going to help lead this church. I forgive you. Everything's right between us. I love you. You love me. Hey, this is the gospel, that those of us who mess up, who slip, who fall, can find within the confines of the Christian fellowship forgiveness and restoration." So here is Peter becoming a leader in the church, because Jesus is saying, hey, just because you messed up that one time, that doesn't mean you can't serve me. Now, perhaps you, my friend, have had that problem. You've slipped up, you've fallen, You've had times in which you've done some things that embarrassed you and would definitely embarrass the Lord. And you felt like, well, could God really use me after that? Have I messed up so badly that God will never use me for anything any good anymore? That is not the case, my friends. Listen, if he can take a guy that messed up as badly as Simon Peter and turn around and make him a leader in the church, will preach on the day of Pentecost and 3,000 people come to Christ. Listen, he can use you, and he will use you, as long as you, like Peter, are surrendered to the Lord and love him with all your heart. Watch what Jesus does to finish up this passage. He says, I assure you, speaking to Peter, when you were young, you would tie your belt around and walk wherever you wanted, but when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go. And he said this, John comments, to signify by what kind of death he would glorify God. And after saying this, he told him, follow me. So Jesus gently restores Peter, even prepares him for the idea that he may have to give his life for this love of the Lord. But it's okay. You can be ready for that, be prepared for it. Your love may take you to a place where you do the same thing I did, lay down your life for this testimony. It'll be a good thing. You won't get to grow old like some of these other folks who get to be led around by the hand. Instead, you'll die a martyr's death, and that's exactly what happened to Peter. In fact, it happened to most all of those disciples that were with him. They died different kinds of deaths, most all of them as martyrs. Even John, who survived being boiled in oil, perhaps lived a much longer life, but the rest of them all, in love, laid down their life for the one who loved them and gave his life. The same one we preach today, the same one who loves us with an everlasting love. Well, thanks for joining me this morning. Pray for the voice. Hopefully you'll get better by tomorrow, and you have a great day in the Lord. Let's once again tomorrow wake up in God's Word.